If you don't have the right mindset, the right discipline, the right habits, then you'll never get to the...
I would never take on a view that you're in second place. I always take on a view that the place is number one. You've got to look at the competition and say, how do we compete?
People are intrigued about what others who have peak performance.
If somebody's listening right now and you're like, I don't deal with chronic pain, or I don't have the emotional pain, but you do have pain.
How do we de-risk taking a creative shot? And to try the idea, I've got to roll it out company-wide, and I'm betting my career and my family and my future on this one idea. And when the stakes are that high, of course you're not going to do it. It's too scary.
If you look at life, right, in most cases, and think about this, those of you at home or wherever you are right now, listen to this. When you think about going to the next level, it doesn't mean your back's against the wall, but wherever you are, you think of the next level. A lot of times our brain thinks how and and the tactic, strategy, or tool to get there. But now at 52 years old, I realize that the tool or the tactics or the strategies, though important, I love strategy. Being a strategist is something that I'm passionate about, and laying out the funnel, laying out the framework, laying out the process. But what I realized at this age, and so do you, Jeff, I'm sure, is that if you don't have the right mindset, the right discipline, the right habits, the right morning routine, then you'll never get to the depth of the effort you need to do to make it work. I believe most people, sorry to have a silly sports analogy, but I think most people give up on their businesses or their dreams or their life goals at the 5-yard line. They don't realize they're an inch away. They have the capabilities, they have the opportunity. They live in an area where there's no limits. We're in a time where we're connected to the whole entire world. We had 837,000 people on a challenge. Oh my God, right? We're connected. But what happens, what gets in your way is an old belief. Or you're married to someone you love, but they look through the lens of half empty, and they're telling you it won't work, and we're going to fail, and we're going to lose everything. And that hits something that your father told you when you were 7 years old. If you don't have the discipline, the habits, again, I say the same thing, the morning routines that allow you to overcome the mindset, then you'll give up on the 5-yard line, not realizing you'll think it was the tool or the tactics when actually it was an old belief that you didn't squash. Has anything in your life worked well if you're not committed, right? Relationships, do they work if you're not committed? If you're texting or DMing or talking to other people, it never works. If you say you're going to the gym, but you really go there and sit on the edge of the bench and you scroll through Instagram, you tell your friends you went to the gym, but you know you really didn't do crap. Does it work out for you? When you say you're eating good, but when no one's watching, you're eating the things that make you overweight or make you unhealthy. Nothing has ever worked in our lives when we're not committed. But sometimes people dabble in business and want to be entrepreneurs and expect it to get the results. And here's the thing, is the next 5 years of your life is going to happen anyway. The next 5 years, you're going to have disappointment. The next 5 years, you're going to be let down. The next 5 years, things are going to go wrong. The next 5 years, your inner subconscious is going to make you doubt yourself. You're going to feel like an imposter. All of those things are going to happen anyway. But here's what I know. You could have all those feelings in 5 years now and still be in the same exact place as you are now. And how would that feel if in 5 years you were exactly where you are? Or you could take the next year, 5 years, and go deeper in your entrepreneurial journey, deeper towards your success, deeper on your solopreneurship or taking your business to a next level. You're still going to have all those emotions, but on the other side, you're not still in a time and effort community and allowing someone else to own your future. You own your future. You own the next level. You get to make decisions. So you got the next 5 years happening anyway. You might as well find that thing, pivot, shift, close that door, leave that door closed that closed in front of you, and go explore. And again, that's why we're doing things like these challenges, so you can explore and investigate and see if there's a new path for you in this new world. If you say, I could be a millionaire, I could scale my company, I could start my company, I could live on my own, I could do this, but usually the but is your story, right? And we know that. You've heard this before. Not the first time sharing. Jeff's probably shared this in a really elegant way with you. Your story of why it won't work, where you live, your age, technology, don't have money, don't have time, your spouse doesn't believe in you, you failed before, you're a procrastinator. I don't know what it is, but that story is the only thing holding you back from where you are to where you want to be, right? We know that. But here's what I would love for you to think about it as we get to the end here. How do you get disturbed with that story? Because right now you're giving that power to something that's bullshit. because you could go Google 100 people that started broke, no education, didn't go to high school, parents didn't believe them, physically abused, sexually abused, live in the wrong area, immigrant, got made fun of, was a nerd, broke, divorced, unhappy spouse. You could go Google people right now with whatever ails you that they went on to reach their full potential and live a good life. So the story's bullshit. It just, as I say that, you might go, oh, Dean, you're wealthy now, you're happy. But I had all those stories, all of them. And I had to elegantly bust. I don't even know if it was elegant. I had to find a way to break every one of those stories. And here's how I did it. I saw the power of what that story did on me. I felt its weight of holding me back. And here's how I look at it. I'd pretend it's 5 years from today and nothing's changed in your life. And if you're not climbing, you're sliding. So it probably got a little worse. You have a little bit less money. You dream bigger, but the dreams seem farther away. You didn't spend more time with your family. You're not the dad or the mom you thought you'd be. You don't have the freedom or time. Someone else owns your future. How would that feel in 5 years from now if that story was the reason you didn't go after it? Can you fail? Hell yes. I've failed more times, and Jeff would probably agree. I've failed miserably. I've doubted myself. I've had sleepless nights. I've said, you're a fool. Why would you try? But I get up and go after it again because I deserve to be in control. My children deserve a better version of me. My wife deserves a better version of me. My team deserves a better version of me. So I keep that uncomfortable action going forward. So all I can say is, if you let that story rule your life, in 5 years from now, life will be the same. And how would that feel? How would it feel in 10 years from now? Here's the last thing I'll say. I said, if you had, at the end of your life, you had the chance to meet your maker. And this is not me saying, I'd heard this from someone else a decade ago and it floored me. What if you got to sit down with God or whoever you believe in, and God says, thank you, I'm glad you're here, and I have 5 minutes for you. So tell me about your life. You say, I was going to go after it, but my wife didn't believe me. My husband thought that wasn't the right thing. It was the wrong time, the wrong president, the wrong economy. And all of a sudden, God said, wow, I wish you would have went after it. But can I just show you, I know you lived this life, but I just want to show you who you could have been. Could you imagine if God showed you who you could have been by taking that uncomfortable action, by busting that stupid lie of a story? So whatever it takes for you to be disturbed, literally be disturbed by this, be disturbed at the end of your life, you won't be the man, the woman you were destined to be disturbed. You're not tapping into the full potential. Do whatever it takes to crush that story and then replace it with an empowering story. So the cool thing about self-education is you get the opportunity to shift your mindset so you become unstoppable. And then when you implement the tool, nothing can stop you. I had dyslexia, struggled in school, so it wasn't my thing. I barely got out of high school. In fact, principal, I was telling you this earlier, principal is a really great friend of the family, and I think he kind of let me get out of 12th grade. But here's what I want to share and not go through the whole thing. I remember what it was like knowing I wanted more. I watched my dad work 100-hour weeks and struggle and have nothing. I watched my mom work 3 jobs to have nothing. They were separated, so both struggling. They worked hard, but didn't have anything. And I just realized at a young age it wasn't working, right? Like they worked hard, but they didn't have anything. And I was fortunate enough to become friends with some older, very successful people in my town, Dominic Affuso, Joey Noto, and Mark Miller. These were great entrepreneurs, good human beings. And they gave me different guidance, different thinking processes. Completely, it was like being an alien compared to the way my parents thought, Jeff. And maybe you felt this way at a certain phase of your life, but I started implementing and doing certain shifts. And again, didn't go to college, started making shifts, got the entrepreneurial flair, started working on wrecked cars and fixing them up and flipping them, got a tow truck, bought a couple houses with no money down after trying 500 different deals. I finally got a couple deals, started working real estate and cars, started getting momentum, got apartments, started building houses. And then something really crazy happened. I was already on my way to be successful. Then something in my mid-20s changed my life forever. I saw an infomercial with Tony Robbins. It just spoke to my heart. I was like, oh my God, where's this guy been my whole life? Because I didn't read books. I didn't go to college. My guidance counselor, I remember her telling me, oh, you're not going to college. And she wanted me to go apply at a minimum wage job, a factory down the street. Like I didn't know there was this thing called self-education, learning from others. I got Tony Robbins' course and it fundamentally shifted me forever. I paid for knowledge. That knowledge put me in a different state, allowed me to use my weaknesses as my strength, to overcome obstacles, to focus on solution, to shift my beliefs, to love my family, but not model them. And literally life was never the same. I decided to go into the knowledge industry. I wrote an infomercial. My first one was 1998, Jeff. I went on TV in 1999, failed miserably, learned, grew, got hooked and obsessed on impacting people's lives for a living. And since then, I've gone on to be a multiple New York Times bestselling author, do some amazing stuff, live a life I never thought was possible. And now I'm just hell bent on giving back. Like I know you are, Jeff, or you wouldn't be here doing what you do. You know, the world, we're in a weird place in the world right now. We're in a place where entrepreneurship and success is something you truly have to learn on your own, because it's not taught in school. It's not taught by most people. And it's only about 2% of the world that has the nerve to gain the capabilities, take uncomfortable action, and own their future. So anything I can do to share with this amazing audience to give you the strength through these uncertain times, the capabilities to fight forward, or the passion to take the uncomfortable action it takes to hit your full potential. Because the magical money machines that you see all over the internet, how is that working for people? Right? People need to go upstream and make subtle little shifts in their life. Like I told you, I got to be friends with these 3 older guys in my town, and the way they talked to me was nothing I'd ever heard in school, nothing I ever heard from my parents. And when I started making these shifts, as you would call them secrets and I call them habits, when I made those, I started getting exponential bumps up in my life. By the time I was 27, I retired my mother. By the time I was 32, I retired my father. They both worked hard, but they didn't have the subtle shifts that successful people use. And I love what you're doing. And I already know what the book's like from without reading it. It's anchoring in that foundation so success is possible, no matter where you are. And doesn't matter where you are financially or where you live in the world. And the one thing I know when I wrote that book, Jeff, and what Tony and I are doing with our challenge coming up, is I love making people feel disturbed within action. Because listen, at the end of our lives, when we look back, if we didn't go after it, we're not going to say, I'm so glad I played it small. I'm so glad I didn't go after my dreams. I'm so glad I let someone else own my future. You're not. You're going to be at the end of your life saying, shit, what the hell did I do? I want to redo. Right. So that's why I love a podcast like this, a book like that. It's like, no, this is our time. Gain these capabilities and go out there and be courageous moving forward.
Yeah. And that was kind of where we landed at, is it's not about what you own, like whether you own a business or you own a job. It's about the word control. We accepted the substitution of control for ownership, because it's not like, oh, your step one is to go register an LLC and get a tax ID number. So now you own this thing that's going to magically solve your problems. No, it's own your life. Yes. Control your future and control your income. I don't care if you have a job, then you control your income based on your performance on an assumed between 2.5%, 3% raise potential per year. Yeah. That's what you control, right? Is you control whether or not you get all, some, or none of that 2.5% to 3% per year that they allocate to raises. There's a whole other world where you can own or control, or whatever word you want, your income and your life, and you can make an extra $1 million, or you can spend a month on an island in Bali, or like there's a whole other set of possibilities that nobody talks about. Anyway, so yeah, we are on the same page. But so I'm curious then, and maybe this alludes to what you're doing with Tony, but for where we are in the world right now, the chaotic state of things, the massive uncertainty, and the wide disparity of some people, maybe they're coming from a $1 million job that they're uncertain about because of changes in the medical system or whatever, to the kid coming out of college or even high school who's got nothing and is just trying to get a toehold in life. Do you have any sort of broad guidance for the full spectrum of people that are trying to grapple with the world as it is now, not as it certainly was, or the way it was when education was created, modern education? Like, where do you steer these people now? What's your advice?
Okay. So the first thing is, again, I like to go upstream a little. So there's 2 answers when you ask a question like that. One is, if we don't change the foundation, right? My dad was diagnosed. He's 85 now. When he was 65, he got diagnosed with diabetes. Now I know there's diabetes that can't be cured through diet, so I'm not judging that. But my dad got diagnosed with diabetes. He had all this medicine prescribed to him. And I asked him to try a different way. I said, let's go upstream and let's find out what's causing your diabetes and see if there's a possible, through diet and exercise, we can get you off the medicine. We studied obsessively, read some books, and we got my dad on a different diet 20 years ago. Within 6 months, he was off the medication. He's going to be 86 in June. He's never been on medication. His diabetes isn't there anymore because he went upstream, solved the issue, right? Then if that didn't work, then there's tactical things, right? So let me answer that in 2 ways. One is, I think we need to go upstream a little and realize that when the world shifts like it has, I look at it, you've heard this saying forever, Jeff, if when one door closes, another one opens. Yeah, we get that. But here's what most people do. They stand at the door that's closed and locked, jiggling the handle, dying for it to come open, and complain in their head or their subconscious or their inner self-doubt. It's like, God damn it, I want this door to open. Who would shut this door? I need someone to open it back up. I want life to be the way it was. But do you really? You know, one thing COVID did, Warren Buffett says, when the tide goes out, you see who's swimming naked. Let's look at it. The tide went out when COVID came. And when you really look at it, were you really living the life you thought you'd live when you were a kid? Were you really living into your full potential? Are you really living a life that at the end of your days, if you got a chance to sit with your maker, you could say, I was living a fulfilled life. I loved my job. I loved someone else squashing my dreams, or I loved being in the time and effort community, or I loved being around a boss that never let me have my freedom or not being in control. Most people didn't like it. If you use COVID, lots of bad came from it. But what good came from it, it exposed your life. You had time to sit and reflect. So many of you are still jiggling the damn door handle, waiting for a life to open back up that may never be the same. The world's not going to be the same. And if it did, do you really want it? The other way is knowing that we must go pivot, explore, investigate new ways where the world is shifting. Yes, some industries are going down. Some are exponentially growing. And so many of you already have assets, skills, things that you could do from home that can allow you to impact other people's lives and create success. So the first thing I want to share, if I'm going upstream, like fixing the diabetes with diet and exercise, is know when the world shifts, most people freeze waiting for someone to fix it. You have an unfair advantage if you turn, pivot, and look for another door that's open. You are amongst the 2-3% that are scared, taking courageous, uncomfortable action, but you'll find what's next. And then on the tactical side, what Tony and I have been sharing is the industry you're in, Jeff, now, and I'm in, and I've been in for 20 something years, Tony for 40 something years of being in the self-education industry, being a part of the digital economy, sharing an experience, a passion, a hobby, a skill, a mess that became your message, helping people get through or discover what you've already experienced. And it's one of the fastest growing industries in the world, right? I mean, according to Forbes, the self-education industry, that means going online and paying for a course or a workshop or a mastermind or a Zoom call and learn from someone who's already been there. That industry is heading towards $1 billion a day by 2025. And we're just kind of shaking the trees saying, self-education is what changed my life. If it wasn't for me being introduced to it, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be on your podcast. I wouldn't be a multiple New York Times bestselling author. I wouldn't be to donate and impact and all the things I do. So shifting, pivoting, exploring simultaneously, there's industries like the knowledge industry, the self-education industry that is exponentially growing. And that's why we're teaching people how to be a part of it.
I left at the end of 1989. By that time, we were a $4 billion company. But how did we get there? You know, running was brilliant. And we got in with running with Paul Fireman. And this was fantastic. And we were doing nice business. But there was a guy called Arhil Martinez. I don't know if you've heard of Arhil.
Wait,
Great.
sorry, what was the name?
Arhil Martinez.
No, I don't.
He was a tech rep for Reebok down in LA. And that's good, you know, he was a good athlete. But his wife was going to these classes, aerobic classes. And she came home with her friends, and they were full of it. This is great. And Arnold is saying, what's going on here? What's going on? Oh, wow, this is fantastic. And they said, well, what's aerobics? And Frankie said, well, it's exercise to music, but it really is good music. You know, it's really brilliant. And Arnold said, can I come down and have a look at this and see what's happening? Oh, why not? Next time he went down and he went to these aerobic classes. And what did he see? He saw the instructor in running pumps, and he saw half the class in running shoes, and the rest of the class, no shoes. So he thought, why don't we make a shoe just for these girls? Yeah, be great. This is Los Angeles, fantastic. Off he goes up to Boston because Paul is doing well with running. And Paul, look, got this idea. This is going on now down in LA, aerobics. And Paul is saying, what are you talking about, Arno? He said, aerobics, it's going to be big. But Paul's saying, look, we're doing fantastic. our running market is really growing. You know, we're here with 5-star shoes. We're doing fantastic, and we're growing nicely. We don't need to sort of have doing things down here for some girls just dancing. But Arnhill wasn't put off. He went round to the back door and had a word with the production people. And the production people said, okay, Arnhill wanted 200 pairs. They got him 200 pairs made with glove leather, nice cushioned, woman's fit. We gave them to instructors down in LA and a few of the girls as well around. That's the end of the story, because that was it. All of a sudden, it exploded. We were a $9 million company at that time. And a year later, we were 30 million, then 90 million, then 300 million, then 900 million in successive years. And this was the aerobic explosion, because, you know, people like Jane Fonda started to wear the shoes in her videos, you know, and all of a sudden it just exploded. The, you know, women, girls in America, people in America, just, unless you were into running, you didn't know Reebok. You knew Nike, you knew Adidas, and what were they? Male, sweaty. This was nice, beautiful little company making shoes specifically for women. And yeah, and that just was something, that was magic. So all of a sudden this exploded. So by the end of 1989, we were nearly a $4 billion company. We were full of lawyers. We were full of accountants. We were full of people who knew how to sell boxes. And I'd gone to developing the global distribution. So during that period, I'd put on at least 30 different countries, put people onto, I think we were doing $1 billion then at international, $1 billion. So, and I got to the point where I'm just flying. I'm at 35,000 feet every week, and I'm visiting different distributions. I'm arriving, I'm picked up by a limousine. I'm driven to the best hotels, and you know, I meet with the top people, and we're having wonderful meals at the best restaurants. And I'm thinking, it's gone. This is no longer a challenge. This is just a bigger business now. It's time for me to step back. And for me, that was the feeling of, wow, you know, when you've been pushing hard for 20 years plus, and you've seen the growth, you've enjoyed, you've felt this, you know, you felt really that feeling of achievement, that, you know, and no longer then was it achievement. It wasn't achieving anymore, but I thought it was time for me. I think I'd done my time. Time for me to step back.
You know, in hindsight, it seems like, you know, the relationship between Nike and Michael Jordan, I mean, that was an era defining relationship in retail fashion, right?
Yes.
Do you think that there's anything you could have done in the big scheme to win that fight? I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't have been second place, but do you think that the Nike Jordan pairing in American culture was something that you or Adidas or anyone could have actually overcome, or was it just a competition for second place at that point?
I would never take on a view that you're in second place.
Okay.
I always take on a view that the place is number one. And okay, so somebody's got a real winner. But you know, Reebok had Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah.
And you know, and also Allen Iverson.
Yeah. Who crossed over Jordan. That was such a good game. Yeah.
So, you know, the leverage wasn't right. They didn't leverage that. There should have been more leverage. Yeah, this is, you got to look at the competition and say, how do we compete? You know, not saying, oh, yeah, okay, they're doing whatever. We'll do a bit over here. No, that's competition. You know, it's like, how do we compete? And I think Shaquille O'Neal and Allen Iverson, they could have done the same. They could have been a Jordan. It's just creating it. But again, it's like we were saying, you've got to be there again. Get tired of me. You know, it's until everybody knows.
You're saying you don't think they did that? Because you're right. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal, he was the heir apparent to the iconic Jordan torch for basketball and sports in America. And you're saying you don't feel like the guys went far enough and hard enough with that relationship.
Yeah, Shaquille O'Neal and Pump. You know what? You've got so many winners. You know, you've got to play a winning hand, and somewhere around here, they didn't. And that winning hand is continuing. Even today, you know, we've got Air Jordan. Even today, Jordan means an awful lot with that Nike connection.
Yeah.
And it's there. It's but not so much Shaquille O'Neal and Reebok and Iverson.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Because you almost can't think Jordan without thinking Nike. But you can think Shaquille without thinking Reebok.
Right.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Man, what a great lesson on doubling down on your winners.
Not only is there the external side of who you show up as to other people in the world, but the wars that happen up in here when you're not doing what you know you're capable of doing. And for those that can't see, I'm pointing to my head, the wars and the battles that we have in our mind every single day, you know, those are the things that ultimately, when I go back to like integrity, right? When I'm like doing what I know I should be doing at the level I know I should be doing it at, whatever the results end up being, I can live with that. But when I'm selling myself short and then I'm selling my employees, or I'm selling my kids, or I'm selling my wife, or, you know, anybody short of what I know I can bring to the table, then there becomes this inner friction and turmoil and battle that I have up in my head. You suck, you're weak, you can't, right? All of the stuff that we all know we shouldn't be saying to ourselves, but at the end of the day, we all do, right? And so when you stack those wins, and for me, you know, you said yours is your health and nutrition. I have two lead dominoes in my life. If my health and nutrition is on point, I'm that much more dangerous and weaponized in all areas of my life and my business. And when my relationship with my spouse, my wife, is on point, I show up as a better husband. I'm more energized. I'm happier, you know, going to work and all of those things, right? So I started playing around with this kind of, you know, and inspired by people like Tim Ferriss and other kind of life biohackers, right? That are always like trying to figure out what that next level of performance or awareness or clarity, right? Always that next level of 2.0ing yourself, your lifestyle, your income, your bank account, relationships, whatever it may be, right? That's just, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, of people who have big goals and dreams and aspirations, it's what we're always going to be designed to do. We want to know what is next, right? And so for me, I said, you know what? I'm a rhythm and a framework guy. I like having guardrails because I'm a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type of guy, right? Like when shit's good, it's good. When it's bad, I'm going dark, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I needed to know when I'm operating, and when you feel like, and we all know kind of when you feel like you're in that flow state, right? Of like, man, I feel this momentum. There's nothing that can bring me down. I'm dialed in. I'm the Terminator. Whatever gets put in front of me, I'm taken down, right? And I said, I've never really taken inventory of what's going on in my life, what's going on in my routine. What does my rhythm look like when I'm operating at that level? And I'm a big awareness guy, because when we're more aware on what's going on and we're clear on what that is, we can either get in and double down on what we're doing to crush it, or we can maybe course correct or tweak or pivot or optimize if things aren't working according to plan, right? And so I took inventory of when I'm operating at what I just called 90% or better. And there were really these 10 things that I wrote down. And I would encourage anybody to go, when you're in that flow state, when you feel dangerous and weaponized in life or in business, health, relationships, all areas, right? What is going on? And for me, it was, I'm eating clean and healthy. Usually I'm doing some type of intermittent fasting, whole foods. I'm getting 6 to 7 hours of sleep a night. I'm working on projects that I'm extremely passionate about and enthusiastic about, which really that energy flows into all other areas of my life through and beyond my work. I'm working with world-class talent who I have fun with and who challenge me and who inspire me. So who are you surrounding yourself with as you're doing those things? I'm making money. Let's be honest. I love making money. And when I'm, making money, everything seems to feel and be better, right? My morning and my evening routines are dialed in. I'm working out consistently and challenging myself physically. I'm emotionally, spiritually, and physically connected to my wife. And I am playing full out as a father and getting quality time and creating memorable moments with my daughters. And so when those things are happening in my life, I'm pretty dangerous. I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty fulfilled. I'm pretty purposeful and productive. And I notice that when I feel like something's a little bit off or I'm slipping somewhere, I can literally go back to every single one of these pillars and usually spotlight something that is slipping and is bleeding into other areas of my life slipping too. But knowing at least what my peak performance is, I then can be a little bit clearer and more purposeful when I'm aware things are off. What do I need to go plug back into that I know will at least allow me to swing that pendulum back and create that momentum going back in the right direction?
Hey, sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to let you know you can get a free copy of my book, The Millionaire Shortcut, which shows you the fastest way to become a millionaire in the new economy. And there's a special link just for this episode in the description. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. So you just described your vision of the best version of Matt. And it is such a useful litmus test to be able to, hopefully proactively and preemptively identify, going off the rails or any sort of deviation from your best self before you have to identify it because it's showing up in your results. What are the traits that define your best self? That is just so brilliantly useful.
Oh, absolutely. And again, I think it's something different for everybody. One of the acronyms I use, at least on my podcast, is, I created a planner. It's called the Rich Life Planner. And the acronym RICH is, at the end of the day, everybody has a different definition or vision of what living a rich life looks like. For me, it consists of these kind of 4 pillars, though. R in rich stands for relationship. So having very purposeful personal and professional relationships. I, having very intentional and purposeful plans around your income and your investments. So your active income and your passive investment vehicles. Then you have C, your community and contribution. So who do you surround yourself with? What are you plugged into? Mastermind groups, Chamber of Commerce, whatever it is, right? And other causes and charities beyond just serving yourself. Mm-hmm. And then H, health, mental, physical, and spiritual, right? And that can encompass a lot, but that's my definition of a rich life. And then obviously everybody under those categories can design different goals and approaches and intentions behind those things. But I like to use frameworks because life's complicated and there's so many different hooks and so many different distractions that are going to pull you in so many different directions all the time. And if you can have frameworks that are kind of like what I call the bumpers to my bowling alley of life, mm-hmm. I want to make sure that I'm not bowling gutter balls and I'm at least hitting pins down. And when I'm in the zone and I know what I need to do in terms of my rhythm, I'm probably going to be hitting strikes and spares here and there. But without those frameworks, right, it's very easy for people to just get caught up in the, what I call the vortex of life. And, it's one of those things where if you don't have purpose and intention and kind of guardrails around the things that you need them for, you most likely won't, ultimately optimize what you're capable of doing, whether it's in your health or your relationships or any area of life. So I'm a big rhythm guy. I'm a big routine guy. I'm a big framework guy because I've never been the fastest, smartest, or strongest. I'm usually good at modeling after people who are and applying that into my own unique journey based on what my goals are, what am I trying to accomplish, and by when. And then from there, I can kind of reverse engineer with those frameworks, the best routines, the best goals, the best resources that are all aligned and congruent with that. But you got to be clear. And like you said, there's got to be that awareness around what it is that you're actually going after. And then what is the best, plan and accountability that you can bake into that for your own life. So that way you're building those stepping stones, or what I call the breadcrumbs of life along the trail that you can keep following to get to your destination. destination. It's not going to be flawless. We're all, flawed human beings. But if you can give yourself those guardrails and those frameworks to plug into, you're going to have that much more likeliness of succeeding at what you're trying to accomplish.
And I love what you said about there's two kinds of rich people or two kinds of millionaires. When you said that, I wrote down, there's people who make money the most important thing.
Yep.
And then there's people who make excellence the most important thing. And I think that's my language. I'm fixated on the word excellence, and it's that latter camp that you're talking about. But those people, I would almost challenge anyone to find one of those people who isn't operating off of a fairly simple framework.
Yeah, you're spot on. I know one of my mentors, Jeff Hoffman, he always says, don't chase money, chase excellence. The excellence chases the money, right? Or the money chases the excellence. And so, for me, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. So I like to create very simple frameworks. I'm an executor. I work hard, right? So those are a lot of things where I'm not the LeBron James who's, just got that natural God-given talent. I have certain God-given talents, but at the end of the day, there are a lot of other things holistically that make up this whole package of life for me. And so I try and surround myself with people that are way smarter than me. And I've just always had the belief in myself. One of my early mentors told me, if you want to be successful in life, all you have to do is be dumb enough to believe in yourself every single day and smart enough to take action on those beliefs. And so for me, I've just had a lot of failing forward moments in my life. And I've had a lot of, how do I check my ego at the door and get better from whatever these results are telling me, right? And if it worked, great. Let me double down and figure out how to, get there a little bit quicker, a little bit more efficiently, and a little bit more effectively. And if I lost, well, what are the learning, lessons in this process that I can use to what I call weaponize myself, right? I've learned way more from my failures and my losses than I have of all the wins, right? And so when I look down at my kind of tool belt metaphorically of life and those lessons that I've learned, it's usually been the tools that have been added on there have been from the dark times and the challenging times. I got expelled from high school. I got arrested in college. I, probably wasn't supposed to be successful according to a lot of the people that knew me early on in my life. And yet it was just being curious enough to continue asking quality questions, and based on what my goals were and what I was looking to accomplish, continue believing in myself and just taking action on it every single day, and being aware enough to look at and reflect on the results or the data, the feedback that's being given to me, and make little adjustments over time. Because when you think about it, whether it's wealth or it's a successful marriage or partnership, business, whatever it may be, the best things are always made in the crock pot. And the crock pot has a lot of different ingredients that take time to come together and create that dish. Right? Like you can go and put something in the microwave and get it like that. But at the end of the day, it's not really going to be that great. It's not going to be that worthwhile. And I look at that in terms of everything that's worthwhile in my life is I want results and dishes, i.e. in my wealth and my bank account and my business and my marriage and my relationship with my daughters. All of those things are what I want to create in the crock pot, knowing that I took all the necessary time to put all the right ingredients in. I put in the work and I let it have the time that it needed to produce the result that ultimately is required in order to get that outcome. And I think a lot of people, they want it quick. Don't get me wrong. I'm a millennial. I pace in front of the microwave, right? I want my shit fast, right? Which we all do. We all want those quick hits of dopamine and gratification and all of that. But at the end of the day, when you think about the best stuff in life, whether it's your wealth, it's a successful business, it's a strong marriage, it's great friendships, whatever it may be, that doesn't come in the microwave. It really is created in the crock pot. And so having that long-term perspective of becoming a millionaire, and mind you, millionaire in the context nowadays is $1 million. It's not really that much. And at the end of the day, the people who have become millionaires will tell you that when they looked at their bank account statement the day before and the day after they became a millionaire, they didn't really feel that much different, right? So I'm a big believer that Money only makes you more of who you already are. And it's just going to give you more of a platform and a spotlight to truly exemplify and enhance those qualities within you. If you're a good person, you're going to use your money and your platform and your brand and your opportunities to go and make an impact and to influence people and to create a better life for yourself and for your family and other things that you're passionate about. And if you're a shitty person, you're just going to find more opportunities to be a shittier person when you have that money as well, right? So I really do think money is absolutely important, and it's a very strong tool and resource that every single one of us who has good intentions and has really amazing goals tied to their money should 100% chase and go after. And it shouldn't be demonized, and it shouldn't be this bad negative thing that oftentimes we've seen and heard for many decades and years, whether that was through parents or teachers or grandparents, or in the media, right? I think, more and more people should aspire to be millionaires, but there is a plan and a path that goes along with that. And there are many different ones that all converge to kind of crossing that threshold milestone, but be open and flexible. And at the same time, know that there are foundational principles that are going to help you get there without you having to struggle and learn those things on your own by listening to shows like this.
I was so broken and in such a dark place and had lost hope. And once I had some hope and knew that I could rise up again and reinvent myself, I thought, if I can do this, then I want to turn my pain to purpose and share it with others that who are struggling. And I know there's a lot of people that are still struggling with things going on in the world right now, things that, their lives have been turned upside down. And for me, when I was 38, my life was completely turned upside down. I mean, I'm sitting here looking out my window and I can see palm trees. And I was at a point in my life where I'm like, I'm living the California dream. I mean, I finally got a good husband after 2 failed marriages. I've got 2 healthy daughters. My career was booming. I was sponsored by Nike. I was doing fitness videos. If you walked into Rite Aid or CVS, you would see all these vitamins with a picture of me on the label. And so life was good. And in a blink of an eye, it all changed when I was coming home from work on my motorcycle and I got hit by an SUV. And I was rushed to the hospital. And when I woke up out of a coma over a week later, the first thing I learned was doctor said, we're going to have to amputate your leg. There's really nothing we can do for you. It's basically a war wound. You've only got a 1% chance of saving it. And what I heard was, there's still a chance. There's 1%. Oh, well, then there's still a chance. I said, we have to find a doctor that's willing to save it. And so my husband, when I was in a coma, they wanted to go ahead and amputate it. And he said, no, I want her to wake up with both of her legs. I want that to be her decision. And there was just something inside me. I wanted to try to fight to keep my leg. And, fitness was my life. It was my livelihood, but I was a former professional dancer. Running was really my therapy. I love to run. I mean, ever since I was a little girl, I set a record in Texas for running the fastest mile. So I thought, I want my leg. And that took 34 surgeries, and it took months in the hospital and thousands of hours of excruciating physical therapy, and they saved it. But then the real journey began, the journey of being told that I would be wheelchair bound anyway because I was diagnosed with a nerve disease, being told I'd never work again, that I'd be permanently disabled. And then, of course, also the journey of having to figure out how I was going to love myself, because now I'm deformed. My right leg is ankles fused. My right leg is all scarred up. My calf is in the front of my leg, and I couldn't dance anymore. And for a long time, I went from being so active to laying in a hospital bed with bed sores, having $2.9 million worth of medical expenses and a lien on our house. And so life was really hard, but through a lot of grit. And by the grace of God, I was able to, pull up my bootstraps, get through that, and really learn how to be resilient. And the beauty is that we all have that within us. We all have that resilience. And it's just being able to tap into it.
You talk about the isolating effects of pain. How, I mean, at a deeper level, like peel back a few layers, like what's going through your head to go, statistically, I'm being told by very well-educated doctors, I'm probably going to lose my leg. It hurts. I'm subjecting myself to this, cut after cut after cut, when frankly, they could, if I would just let them cut the damn thing off, I could have one cut and be done. Like, how are you keeping yourself afloat in that space?
In all transparency, I had no idea that it was going to be 34 surgeries. I was like, we'll do a couple of surgeries. We'll save it. I had no idea. And it probably, in fact, about a year after they had saved my leg and it was giving me so much pain from this dang nerve disease that's dubbed the suicide disease, I went to my doctor and I said, "Hey, look, I appreciate all you've done for me. I appreciate all these surgeries you've done and you've saved it. It's a miracle, but I just can't take the pain anymore. I need you to go ahead and cut it off." And he was like, "Well, we can't do that. You have a nerve disease now. It could make it worse. The pain is here to stay." And that is when I really hit rock bottom. Before that, I was getting through one day at a time, one surgery at a time. And all you really need is a little bit of hope to carry you through. And so when I got my husband found a doctor. He's a lieutenant commander with a highway patrol, and he was used to terms like limb salvage from all the accidents he had seen. And he Googled limb salvage and he found one doctor that was willing to try to save my leg. And we called people, pulled strings, got me transferred to another hospital. And I remember just having hope, knowing that a doctor said yes. That was a glimmer of hope. So I held on to that. And I remember being in that hospital bed. Dr. Don Wiss wasn't even supposed to be in town until Monday morning, and he comes in the hospital Sunday night. And he's coming in, he doesn't have a white coat on. He's just in his brown blazer, and he had a little name tag on that said D Wiss. And I looked at him and I said, "Oh my gosh." I said, "You're the doctor that's going to save my leg." He said, "Well, we're going to try. We're going to go in there. We're going to clean it all up." And I grabbed onto his hand, and that was just like my glimmer of hope. This guy was going to give me a chance. He was going to be willing to try. So every day it was just, one surgery at a time, one day at a time. And I don't think I could have made it through those moments if I didn't believe in God. I mean, I've got, I grew up believing in God and going to church, but my faith is a little different now. Although I don't go to church every Sunday, I really pray every morning, every night. And I try not to just pray when I need something. I try to pray to be thankful. But I think that having a higher power and kind of turning it over and believing that there was something bigger than me that could take the load off of my mind, and I could just be the best I could do every day, eating the best I could, trying to keep my mindset right. But so much of it had to do with my mindset. And there was a time where I was really spiraling down into a depression. And this may sound really simple, but I remember the moment it shifted for me was when I started writing thank you notes to people who had come to see me in the hospital. And that shifted my perspective from looking down at my leg and not knowing whether this was the day they were going to amputate it, or thinking about how grateful I was that I had these amazing people that were coming by to support me. I had somebody that was helping take care of my 2-year-old. I had incredible nurses. So that gratitude is alchemy, and it really does shift our perspective. It's the quickest and easiest way to start feeling better about your circumstances. And so I carried that over with me. And now I practice gratitude every day. And I say practice because some days it's harder to be grateful when you're really struggling. And I think it's important to have accountability. So I also have, actually, I got sober 5 years ago, and it's my sponsor. I text her every single morning and tell her what I'm grateful for. And I share that I have a sponsor because I want people to know that it wasn't just my mindset. It wasn't just, me trying to grit it out and be strong. Like none of that worked. Um, I started isolating and my world got really, really small. And I went from being, you talk about a pain point. I was sexually abused as a kid and physically abused and emotionally abused. It was not a safe place to live when my mom remarried my stepdad. And I luckily had an outlet of athleticism and dance. And so I was fueled to go after my dreams, and I couldn't get out of Texas fast enough to go pursue my careers. And that pain point, I had stuffed a lot of those feelings down. And I realized when I was stuck in a hospital bed that, holy cow, I didn't have any way to process these feelings. I couldn't run. Running was my therapy. It was my everything. And so things got really bad when I didn't have any tools to process all these feelings. And, I have come from a long line, like a lot of addicts and alcoholics in my family. And I was the one that was like, I'm so different. I'm the fitness girl. I'm the achiever. And lo and behold, I learned when nothing was working for my pain, I started trying to self medicate with wine and started becoming dependent on drinking every day. And luckily, I was like, this is not the life for me. But I felt so alone in my pain. I felt like no one would understand the way that I felt. And you know what? If somebody's listening right now and you're like, well, I don't deal with chronic pain or I don't have the emotional pain, but you do have pain, I guarantee you there's somebody else out there that's going through something similar. And I think the important thing to know when you're struggling is that you're not alone in the struggle. There is somebody that is going through something similar. Like you shared that you were bullied. There are so many people that have been bullied that they never heal from that, or they may never do anything with their life because they have been beaten down and beaten down. And you just sharing that you were bullied gives them the hope that they can do something with their lives. And so for me, it's like I share that I've been sober for 5 years because I never in a million years thought that I would drink. I was not a partier. I was a go-getter. I was an achiever. And it doesn't matter who you are, what you come from, how old you are, what race you are, anything. It doesn't matter if you're from Texas or not, you can still become addicted to something. And so I think now with COVID and the pandemic, it's like there's been a lot of addiction rates have gone up. And so I share that just so people know that life does get better. I completely transformed my life, but that was really my rock bottom.
I think a core tenet of being a human being is creative problem solving and imagining. That's the one thing that separates us from animals. We can imagine something in the distance and then figure out how to actually manifest that. So you're right, it's a very important act of being alive. And there are few things in life as rewarding as the expression of creativity. Then you start saying, well, what gets in the way? And the biggest limiting issue is fear, not natural talent, fear. So fear is that poisonous force that robs us of our best thinking and often restricts our creativity. Another big aspect is that we think that it doesn't count. There's a minimum threshold. Unless an idea is $1 billion idea or it changes the world or cures cancer, it's not innovative. And that's nonsense. I mean, the whole book that I wrote is around how you cultivating small, everyday innovations can drive outsized results. And so, again, so someone might say, geez, yeah, I'm not Elon Musk. Guess what? I'm not Elon Musk either. And very few of us are. But it doesn't mean I can't be an innovator. It doesn't mean all of us can't be an innovator. You can be an innovative parent. You can be an innovative spouse. You can be an innovative lawyer or dentist. And so I hope that, and one of the things I try to dispel in the book is that, we have to achieve some level that's otherworldly. We have to be Picasso. You don't have to do that at all. And I love capturing stories of even little nuances that people do. For example, here's one for you. On Halloween, we always carve a pumpkin. And so what do? Like everybody else, you carve it from the top, you stick your hand in there and get all the goop all over your arms. Then you got to light the candle, you stick your hand in and get 3rd-degree burns. You carry the thing around, you got to get underneath it and it's all slippery. So a friend of mine years back told me the simplest big little breakthrough, just an everyday idea. It's like, what if you carved it from the bottom? Blew my mind. Think about this. You carve it from the bottom, then you get to use gravity. All the gunk just comes right out. You want to light it. You put the bottom down, place the candle, put the pumpkin over the candle. No burns. You want to carry it around. You get to use the handle that nature intended. Right. So the point is that there are ideas all around us. You don't have to, invent Tesla to be innovative. We can all be innovative, even in our daily lives.
What are there some more, practical, like ground level tactics that you can implement in a company? Again, I'm asking totally selfishly, to create the environment that produces what you're describing.
So I've researched creativity in organizations for now a couple decades, and certainly practice all of these things that I preach. And I'm always evolving and tinkering and stuff. So I'm not saying it's perfect, but I've done a bunch of stuff personally, just on the outside, and then I'll share one internally. But one company that I interviewed did a pretty cool thing. They issue every year, they have a Failure of the Year award. So they celebrate other stuff like the Team Member of the Year, but here they have the Failure of the Year. It's for the team or individual that had a great idea. Their numbers made sense. They went for it. It didn't work out at all. But instead of getting sent to corporate timeout, they get a standing ovation. People are clapping and cheering and slapping high five. Yeah, way to fail, man. And again, think about the message that drives deep into the DNA of this company. So I think, again, a lot of it is just sort of reverse engineering. How do you want people to think and act and feel? And then putting rituals and rewards in place to do so. But one that I'll share that I did personally, it's kind of funny. So I started this company in 1999 called ePrize. We were sort of like half ad agency, half software company. And we really focused on digital promotions, which at the time was a very small thing. So anyway, by 2004, we were way ahead of the competitive set, which was awesome. And I know most people aren't that lucky, but I was actually worried that our team would start to become too conservative and not push the creative boundaries and get complacent. And I realized that often your greatest ideas are faced when you're up against a competitor.
Yeah.
And since we didn't have a real world arch evil nemesis, I made one up. So I had a whole company meeting, all 500 people. I brought them together and said, all right, guys, there's a company out there that's bigger than us, faster than us, more profitable, more innovative, better clients, better investors. And I introduced them to our fake made up nemesis, the Slither Corporation. They knew it was fake. I wasn't trying to pull a fast one, but anyway, this became part of our culture. This company that we imagined in our minds was the ideal competitor that never made a mistake, that never missed a quarter. And so this became part of our culture. So for example, Jeff, we would say things like, before Slither, I would say, hey, we need to reduce our production time. How should we do that? People would freeze up. They don't want to say the wrong thing, etc. So then we started using Slither. Later on, we'd say things like this. Our spies at Slither just got a report that they reduced 2 days out of their production time. How do you think the folks at Slither did that? And in this case, people were just liberated. And we do all these things like, hey, what's your counterpart? What's one thing your counterpart at Slither is doing differently than you? And so everyone knew, and I'm not being glib about it. I know most of us have real world competitors, but imagine for a second that Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg each put $1 billion on the table, and they opened up right down the block from you or whatever your businesses are, those that are listening, and said, our whole goal in life is to take you down. And we've got no baggage of the past. We have no history. There's no right way of doing things. We're going to start with a blank page. What might they do differently? And what could we learn from it? So the idea here, the technique that I use, which is wildly effective, is invent your ideal enemy and imagine what they might be doing differently than you.
Anybody out there that feels like you can't afford, or you don't have access, you don't know who to go to for consulting, just start a podcast and just invite people on and ask them for all their best ideas and just take notes. It's amazing. No, seriously, this is such good stuff. And it's interesting, that scenario you just described. I was literally it was eight days ago on a leadership call for my business, Entra. I was basically ranting about complacency because we're very proud of what we've done. We have a strong culture. We're kind of creating or at least driving innovation in a category. We don't have some obvious competitor that's doing what we do bigger and better than we do. And what I lose sleep about at night these days is that we're going to get soft and lazy and start taking for granted that success is assured. And, we had a little bit of tailwind last year from COVID, and we grew 3,500% in 12 months last year. So it's like, oh yeah, it's, this is easy, man. And I'm just like, no, we gotta figure out how to make it hard. And I love what I always say that I say, one of our values, we eagerly do hard things well. You got to lean into the hard. If nothing worthwhile is easy, then logically, therefore, nothing easy is worthwhile. And success feels too easy right now. How do we make it hard? And I love what you just said. You make it hard by creating a competitor that's better than you, because it's really hard to beat someone that doesn't have the encumbrances that you have, because you actually have to do business in the physical world. Like you said, they can be backed by Warren Buffett. They can have, advanced artificial intelligence. They can have all the best processes, and, they could come in with amazing ERP software that automates everything. Like, you could just give them all these advantages and go, okay, now what do we do?
You got it. That's exactly right. And so anyway, it's almost like when you were learning music, you call it a forced handicap. Like when I was studying music in school, I went to the Berklee College of Music. I had a professor that would force me to remove strings from the instrument. So I would have to take off up to 3 strings from the guitar. And now that I'm in a forced handicap situation, it actually pushed my creative boundaries, because I could no longer rely on the models of the past. And so this notion of this ideal competitor does the exact same thing. And by the way, anyone who's listening back to our principle of testing, someone might say, oh yeah, that's cool, but I don't know if it's for me. And it is really going to work 10 years from now. Don't even worry about that. We all have a to-do list. What about a to-test list? So if you hear an idea like that and you're like, that might work, it might not, just say, okay, cool. Is there a way I could try it for a week? Could I try it in one meeting? Can I try it for 30 days? Just like Jeff, I would say, try that on. And if it works for you, keep it. And if it doesn't, try the next thing. And when you get into this notion of testing, instead of making wide sweeping global permanent change, it is the most liberating thing ever, because it takes all the pressure of getting it right off your shoulders and you get going. I'd rather you get going and try something and pivot and adapt as you go than wait too long and miss the opportunity altogether.
And by the way, you are speaking deep gospel level truth to a digital marketer, because, as somebody that lives and dies off of running traffic into online funnels, we take nothing for granted. The only right answer is always just, we'll test it. I actually haven't looked in there in a while, because we have people that do it now, but I mean, at any given time, we probably have 10 or 20 split tests running in our business. And it's everything, man. It's what's the color of the button on the checkout page? What's the text on the button of the checkout page? Does it say click here? Does it say submit? Does it say get access? Does it say get my free download? Everything we can think of to test. That is part and parcel of being a digital marketer. But you're right. It's not how most of the world works. Most of the world is not running constant experiments.
A couple other thoughts, just because I'm so passionate about it, that I learned in really putting this book together, that I just want to share, because, entrepreneurs, regardless of the size of your business or the field that you're in, share some similarities. A couple other principles that might be helpful. One of them I call start before you're ready. And the notion is that too often we wait. We wait for permission or a directive, or till we have some bulletproof game plan or some evidence that never comes. And what do? We either wait and never get started, or we get started too late. The principle that I share here that innovators tend to do is they just get after it. They dive in knowing full well they don't have all the answers, knowing full well they're going to make mistakes, knowing full well that the beginning is going to be fairly messy. But then they're willing to course correct and adapt and be agile along the way, pivot, move. And that's actually a more productive approach.
If you loved that episode, then you're definitely going to love this one. Check it out.
Schools are still teaching general knowledge. You take 20 different classes, even though you want to do one thing. General knowledge, no matter how vast and how much you gain of it, will never accumulate to wealth.